a final breath stolen in silence. Bodies discovered where no living soul should be. Fate doesn't always whisper. Sometimes it devours, leaving only unanswered questions. Behind every closed case lies a shadow, and some shadows never die. In early January of 2025, a quiet sense of unease spread through Windsor, Ontario. A young newcomer from Iran, only 26 years old, suddenly stopped appearing at her job, leaving friends, colleagues, and neighbors unsettled. She had last been noticed near the busy stretch of Huron Church Road, just after sundown. At the time, she wore a light brown jacket, dark trousers, and white sneakers, details that would later circulate widely as loved ones pleaded for assistance in locating her. The absence was deeply alarming. She had built a modest but warm routine after moving to Canada, often checking in with family overseas through video calls. Though she confided about loneliness and the difficulties of adjusting to the harsh winter, her co-workers described her as vibrant, hardworking, and full of energy. When she didn't return home that night, concern grew rapidly. Posters went up, searches began, and soon the local community organized a candlelit gathering outside the spa where she had worked, praying for her safe return. Weeks passed, and hope turned into painful uncertainty. The city grew familiar with her photograph, shared widely online and pinned to storefront windows. Those closest to her held on to the idea that she might still walk through the door. But as days turned into months, the silence became heavier. Then, in March, came the grim discovery. Authorities confirmed that her remains had been located. The announcement devastated those who had been following her story. It was not the outcome anyone wanted, and it opened more questions than it answered. Officials stated there was no indication of criminal involvement, but beyond that, details were scarce. The lack of clarity around how she died stirred an uneasy sense of mystery. Was it a tragic accident? An illness? A deliberate decision to end her life? None of those possibilities have been confirmed. An autopsy was reportedly underway, yet no full explanation was offered publicly. This left friends, family, and the broader community in a difficult position, forced to grieve without understanding the circumstances. Her relatives, still in Iran, faced an additional layer of hardship. With no formal diplomatic connection between the two countries, they could not easily travel or manage affairs in person. Their mourning happened at a distance, over phone calls and messages, unable to even attend the vigil that honored her memory. Meanwhile, efforts began to raise funds for the return of her remains to her homeland. Contributions trickled in, reflecting both sorrow and solidarity from strangers who had never met her, but felt the weight of her story. On a September morning in 2023, a teenager from the quiet Alsace village of Champagney set out for what should have been a simple journey. She was expected to reach the small station at Saint-Blaise-la-Roche, where a train would take her to Strasbourg to see her boyfriend. Around 11:15 a.m., she was seen walking along the rural route. A few minutes later, her phone pinged for the last time at 11:22, but she never arrived at the platform. As hours passed with no sign of her, unease quickly spread through the family and the surrounding towns. By nightfall, police and volunteers had launched searches across fields, rivers, and wooded paths. Helicopters circled overhead, canine teams combed the terrain, and divers scoured nearby water. Despite this massive effort, there was no trace of the missing girl. Her photograph began to appear everywhere, on lampposts, shop windows, and online campaigns led by her devastated loved ones. Hundreds of strangers joined the search in the following days, but every lead seemed to collapse into silence. Time stretched on, and the community was left with a void, holding on to hope while fearing the worst. Months slipped away. Investigators chased different possibilities, but failed to secure a breakthrough. Then, almost a year later, a disturbing connection surfaced. A stolen vehicle, a Ford Puma, was linked to a man named Samuel Gonin, a former carpentry teacher with a troubled past. Inside that car, officers discovered a handbag and traces of DNA pointing back to the missing teenager. GPS evidence placed the same car close to where she had last been seen. Ghanan's profile unsettled many. A history of violence, psychiatric struggles, and an unstable life. But before he could be fully interrogated, he took his own life in July 2024. His death robbed authorities of answers that might have clarified her fate. 3 months later, in October, the long wait ended in tragedy. Deep in a remote wooded area near Sermoise-sur-Loire, hundreds of kilometers away from where she disappeared, her remains were uncovered. Forensic experts, working with what little was left after more than a year of exposure, concluded that she had likely been strangled, the markings on her neck consistent with the handle of a tote bag. The grim discovery confirmed the fears of those who had been holding vigils for her return, yet it also deepened the mystery. How had she ended up so far from home? Did she cross paths with her suspected killer by chance, or was she targeted? And without the opportunity to question Gonin, these questions may never be fully resolved. The family's anguish was compounded by the unanswered gaps. For them, the year-long uncertainty was followed by the unbearable truth of her death, and still no clear account of her final hours. Late January 2025, an evening began like any other at a group residence in Mesa, Arizona, where a 14-year-old member of the San Carlos Apache tribe lived. That night, she quietly stepped out, clad in a pink and gray top, leaving behind the structure intended to protect her. Around 7:45 p.m., surveillance captured her departing on foot, though officials haven't disclosed exactly where she was seen. Days hum quietly stretch into weeks when family waits without answers. But this time, no message arrived. Her absence went unnoticed until an entire week later. In the days that followed, loved ones learned that she had fled multiple times before, vocalizing her yearning to return to her grandmother's home on the reservation rather than stay inside the institutional walls. It seemed she was yearning for the familiar, the comfort of home cooking, the rhythm of tribal life, and the safety of close kin. Eventually, a grim discovery shattered the fragile hope. On February 14th, hikers stumbled across trash bags off Highway 60, some 80 to 100 miles away from Mesa, where human remains were found. Identification confirmed it was her, and the Pinal County medical examiner ruled the cause: homicidal violence with blunt head trauma. Authorities treated it as intentional harm, yet the perpetrator remains unknown. Her death echoed far beyond that dusty stretch of highway. At a vigil near her former residence, hundreds, clad in red and holding candles, gathered to honor her memory and express grief, intertwined with collective outrage. Signs read, "Justice for Emily Pike," and "No More Stolen Sisters," underscoring the anguish carried by Indigenous communities plagued by higher rates of disappearance and violence. Tribal leaders, lawmakers, and advocates sounded urgent calls for reform. Investigators from the FBI, the Gila County Sheriff's Office, and the Bureau of Indian Affairs joined the hunt for truth. As of now, no arrests have been made, and the case remains open. Meanwhile, rewards totaling over $150,000, offered by both federal agencies and her tribe, seek to encourage anyone with relevant information to come forward. The ripple effect of her death led to meaningful change. Arizona passed a new turquoise alert system, named in her honor, to ensure that when Indigenous individuals under 65 go missing under alarming circumstances, the public is quickly notified. Emily's Law, as it's known, echoes existing early warning systems, but tailored to communities that have historically lacked visibility. This step, officials hope, will ease delays and missteps in protecting vulnerable individuals.